Hi everybody, it's Sean. Today's video is called Understanding the CSAY Rule. And before I get started, I want to remind you all to subscribe to my channel, of course, if you haven't already, and to visit my website, seanberry-creative.com, for any help you want to receive. If you go to the contact form, you can send me an email with attachments, ask me opinions about your layouts, and I can give you feedback as I'm able to do so. And anyway, so back to the video. Understanding the CSAY rule. This video actually came from a series of emails that I exchanged with a subscriber. His name is Fahim Ahmed. So Fahim, if you're watching this, hello again, and thanks for your emails because they prompted me to think more about this subject. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly. But anyway, understanding the CSAY rule. So this is a bit of an advanced creative tutorial. It's not about design as much. This is a little more about the headspace of concept development. And you'll see as we go through this that there's an area that almost everyone falls into. It's a trap because it seems like a good idea, but in the end it ends up never being a good idea. And you'll see that there are a couple of exceptions that I'm going to go through and kind of help you to understand. And you know, I did this a lot in the early part of my career as well until I began to understand how this worked. And once I understood it, I was able to avoid it. But every once in a while, this will get you into trouble, is trying to break the CSAY rule. So the CSAY rule is, if you see something, then that's what you should talk about. So if I show you a picture of an elephant, but I'm talking about a steak dinner, you don't know what I'm talking about. It doesn't make any sense. So the CSAY rule is one of those rules that's hard to break if your goal is clear communication. So I want to start out by saying this specifically, that rules are made to be broken, and we talk about that every so often. I'm a big fan of breaking the rules. However, I'm not a fan of breaking the rules if it makes it harder to communicate what you're trying to communicate, because this is where it all comes down to. As long as the broken rule looks better than the observed rule, go ahead and break the rule. But if the observed rule looks better or communicates better than the broken rule, then the rule wins. And so that's something that you should keep in mind. And the CSAY rule is no exception. So if your goal is clear communication, you can't break it. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's begin with this photo. So obviously, happy girl. This photo was taken by my friend Anthony Taylor, who's a photographer and web developer that I work with pretty often, a good friend of mine. So he shot this photo, and so here's this girl. She's obviously happy. I don't need to tell you she's happy. She clearly is. And the next photo is a woman who's obviously not as happy. Looks depressed. It's all kind of dark, moody. You get the idea. So far as I can tell you visually, that she's happy by showing you the photo, I can also tell you in words, hey, happy. So now you understand that I'm now talking about the subject of happy, and that she is simply a visual tool to communicate happy. In the same way that if I show you this image again and call it sad, you understand that I'm showing you an image to support the words that I'm giving you. And it doesn't take a lot for you to understand what you're seeing. I can take that a little further, of course, and I can now give you a message which is supported by the visual. So when I say the CSAY principle, I'm talking about this kind of thing. Actually, there's a more obvious version of the CSAY principle, which I'll just tell you because I think it's pretty easy to say. If I show you a car and I say new car, then that is the absolute purest form of CSAY. You say exactly what you're looking at. You describe the photo, and the photo is exactly what the words are describing. This, however, is still CSAY, but it's now getting out into the territory of communication. So she's getting married, happy girl. Okay, she's clearly happy to be getting married. Conversely, she lost her job. So I look at this visual, I read the words, she lost her job, obviously. There's no confusion for me at that point. However, and I still laugh when I see this, so I could make an argument somehow that if you could have some idea about humor that might make this work, but her parents just divorced. Well, wait a second, the image, you got to explain that to me now because the image doesn't make any sense. So if in the body copy say this was an ad, and suddenly there was some body copy that described this, but at the very bottom of the layout, for example, if this were an ad, if it said Comedy Central or something like that, then you might go, oh, okay, fine, they're messing with me. But you still had to get there. But this seems kind of funny. So conversely, if I show you this image and suggest that she won the lottery, in the same way, it's kind of funny. This one's not as funny because depression's harder to make funny. But you get the idea that, haha, that seems kind of funny, but it's also sort of weird. Same way, this is like, what do you mean she won the lottery? And I see this image. So in these last two, I've tried to break the CSAY rule. But what I've done is I've created an extra layer for you to get through. So now I have to explain this. She won the lottery, and maybe there's some copy that says, and all of her friends only wanted her money, and then her family disowned her because they didn't believe in the lottery. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these things I would have to do to try and bring you around to where this was. And I might lose you in the process. So if my goal was clear communication, I failed. And so I'm going to take this particular example a little bit further. This is a layout that I did for a previous video, I think it was last year or whatever. And so this ad was meant to demonstrate a different principle, but now I'll use it for this idea. So in the CSAY principle, this makes sense. Depression makes, and by the way, before I show you these, I should just point out that meaning no disrespect to anyone who's going through depression or anyone who's dealing with difficult times. I chose these subject matters because they seem to make sense to me, but don't think that I'm making light of depression if you have a friend who's depressed or family or you yourself have dealt with it. This is by no means some lighthearted jab on my part, so just FYI. So depression makes even small problems feel like the world is closing in. And so you can see the type is kind of running over her and making this uncomfortable situation, and the visual supports it. I see what I'm saying. So the words and the visual work together, and then the helpline, there is help, 800-555-HELP was the fake phone number with some body copy there. So that works. Now, once again, if somebody is dealing with depression, happiness is not as simple as a choice. That's a very, depression's a very real problem, and but these are examples. Again, please just accept this as a creative example. So if I were to contrast this by saying happy is as simple as a choice, and maybe that choice is to call this 1-800 number. So it's the same number, but now it's find your happy place, which might be a clever twist on, the helpline is the happy place where you can actually get over your depression or whatever. Again, forget the words, but get the idea that these two things are CSAY accurate. They show you what is being described in the concept, but I can't switch them. And this is where people fall into the trap. So now, using an ad as an example, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. And people that have shown me examples of their work, I don't mean through the website, I mean through my career in ad agencies as well. People who have shown their work, they fall into the trap of thinking that this works, because they're like, oh, I'm going to say happiness is as simple as a choice because obviously this person is depressed and they want to be happy. But that's a connection you're asking the reader to make. And it's not as obvious to them as it is to you, and it starts to break down. Because the CSAY rule here is vital to this communication, because this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, you can try and pull it off in the copy. I can't argue that you could not copyright your way out of this problem. But if nobody reads that copy, you're done. And that's a huge problem. And so by the same token, I couldn't take the depression makes even small problems feel like the world is closing in and show this happy person and then try to describe in the body copy, oh, well, no, but she's happy because she called the 1-800 number. It doesn't work. You can't write your way out of this problem. And so many people want to, because they're holding on to this idea that they think it's a good idea, and they're struggling with it. And I'll give you a quick example, a little side note. I did a job in college, and in fact, I even mentioned this example to Fahim in the email. Back when I was in college, I did one of my first ads for my college professor. And it was in layout class or concept development class, and my idea was to sell a camera. So I spelled the word shutter, S-H-U-T-T-E-R, in the following headline: Shutter the Thought. In my head, what I was saying was, oh, well, anything you think about, you can take a photo of with this great camera and all its features. But my professor looked at it and said, no matter what this means to you, what it means to me is, don't buy this camera. Shudder the thought of buying this camera. And I argued with him for an hour about this, and he still failed me on the project. And I was angry for like weeks, because I was just like, nah, this was a good idea. He didn't see it. And now I know that I was totally wrong and he was totally right. And that's just a little side note to share with you. But anyway, getting back to the layout at hand, you can see that I can't tell you one thing and show you another and get away with it, because now I've got to explain what this means. However, I don't have to explain this. You understand it completely. And you understand this completely. So that's important to note. So if you want to be clear, you can't break the CSAE rule. But if you're just trying to be cool, pardon my copywriting there. So I did this quick little example of something that I would consider a successful rule breaker. But you can see that you've really got to have an idea that supports it. Now, I just made this up. This is meaningless. But I want to show you that if I had a client, I've called it, if you look down here, you can see in this little copy line, there's a website down here. There's a website down here called changeyourperception.com, which is a fake website. That may exist. It may be something different. I just made it up for the purpose of this. So, a blue background with the word red. Doesn't make any sense. So I have this copy line: changing ideas, perceptions, and getting people talking, changeyourperception.com. So let's just say that this website was about world issues, about how people think all Muslims are evil, or they think, any variety of sort of racist or, one-way type thinking. I might have created some organization that says, no, we're going to challenge those things because, they're a wrong way to think. So I could then theoretically use this visual approach to say that there's something about perception. But you can even see from this example, I have to explain this a lot. So even though this is kind of cool and it's not quite as serious as depression, and I get away with it because of what I'm talking about, and I just did 2 other examples to show the same thing. So green with red color, blue with yellow. Of course, you're saying one thing, you're seeing another. Your brain's kind of going, what? What's going on here? But then I could basically say, oh no, I did it for exactly that reason. I'm trying to change your ideas, perceptions, and get you talking. Okay, fine. I suppose you succeeded, but I've got to get there. I have to look at this and get it. I've got to eventually arrive at your idea. So even when I've got a good way to break this rule, it's still tough to break. So that's just something to think about. Now, there's a better version of that thing you're trying to do. It's called juxtaposition. So when you're trying to show one thing and say another, I might be wrong in making this blanket statement, but I'll say this for the purpose of the video, is that I think most people, in fact, are trying to do juxtaposition, but they're not quite getting there, and it seems like showing one thing, saying another is that, but it isn't that. This is very different. And the word, if you've never heard the word juxtaposition, the idea of it is that I could show you one thing next to another, and those 2 things are contrasting. But if I present them to you in a certain way, then the juxtaposition makes sense. And I think this is where people get tricked, because they're trying to do this, but they end up doing the other. Now I'm just going to show you some examples. I downloaded these from the web. And this small copy down there says Ukraine-Russian Dialogue for Peace, the copy down here. There's a website, adot.com. And I don't know what this campaign is about. I didn't do it. Obviously, I give credit to these guys. They own this material. I'm simply showing it to you as a demonstration of an idea. But words kill wars. So, of course, you have a bomb which merges into this pencil shape, and they share the same shape. Juxtaposition. So it isn't CSAE, but you can see that it's kind of connected to that. It's doing what the other stuff is failing to do. There was another ad in the same campaign, which I thought was kind of clever. and this one as well. This one, however, is I kind of like this one. Is for the World Wildlife Federation or Foundation. Sorry, you can help stop global warming. So you got this sort of homeless polar bear. So, you know, you're showing one thing and saying another, but it's not quite the same thing. You're actually saying something and then showing a visual, which is out of context by appearance. At first, it's like, why is that there? Oh, wait, now I get it, right? So it's clever. And it's interesting in the way that those images are juxtaposed, but it's not breaking the CSAY rule. But it looks like the same thing, but it's not. And these two ads for Volvo, of course, are kind of cute. The new eco-friendly cars from Volvo, and there's some wildlife on the hood of the cars in sexy poses. So you sort of get the idea. But I think that this is what people are trying to do when they break the CSAY rule. They don't quite go this far. So I wanted to sort of challenge you with this idea in terms of concept development, that when you're coming up with ideas for an ad or for a website or for a visual, for a theme illustration, whatever it might be, and you're tempted into this area, I think that you should really take your concepts to task and make sure that they still communicate, that you're not showing an unhappy person to say something about happiness, because in that case, you're breaking the CSAY rule by showing its opposite. These aren't the opposite of what they propose to be. So you would see a bear on a car and think, well, isn't that an opposite in some way? But of course, no, it's not. It's actually a clever visual that is simply using something that's, you know, would normally be out of context until you understand the message. It's a tricky area, and it's easy to get sucked in. But just don't take the easy route. And I think breaking the CSAY rule, some of this other stuff ends up being what seems like an easier way to do the same joke, but it actually isn't, right? So coming back to my ad example, there's nothing that I can do which will get this idea across faster than to show the visual that supports the message, right? And showing someone happy, in this case, for the same thing doesn't do the trick. And you can argue all you want that, oh, well, no, the visual is positive, though. Isn't that sort of the end result? Isn't that what I want them to be? Doesn't matter, because I don't know you're thinking that as the audience. And no one's going to evaluate the ideas in the way that you do. No one's going to spend the time you did thinking it through. They're going to look at it and go, don't get it, and they move on. It's not speaking to me. So there's really no escaping it, that this rule can't be broken easily, because if your communication isn't clear anymore, it doesn't make any sense. So juxtaposition versus CSAY, it's a tricky area, and I would encourage you to think about it. Of course, comment below. There's no lapse time because I didn't really create any design that you would want to see in lapse time. But get a dialogue going in the comments if you wish. Of course, as always, other designers chime in, give your thoughts on this as well. But tricky area. Wanted to go through it with you and hope that it all kind of makes sense. And until next time, I'll catch you later. Stay classy as always. Goodbye.